to I think session 11 of our boot camp, and thank you all for joining in. I know these are the final few sessions before you get to do your pitch. On that note, we thank Vanshika Mehta for kindly accepting to be here. Hi, thank you. And,
Hi.
small introduction. Vanshika studied Bachelor's of Science on Management in Management and Marketing at the Northeastern University, and has been working on many things in many places. She was an inside sales consultant in a previous avatar, a social media strategist and a conference planner at Dell EMC. Also was part of the EMC World 2016 Congress. Has been a digital engagement success specialist and launched directed marketing strategy for many clients. Was a community manager at Postfold, engaging community via brand collaborations, event event and content and email correspondences. Led many experiential events there. Also was a content writer and events head events lead at One Thing. He is a brand storyteller, building audiences and transactional customers via multi-channel approach, and was a content and community lead at DigiFind, creating content to build awareness and interest in DigiFind's activities, and additionally was responsible for managing their entire online community. She was a community coordinator with Peak Performer and events, and currently is the event director and communications lead for One Celeber. Apart from that, she is a brand and communication strategy consultant and helps small and medium businesses and people to tell their true story with a strategy alongside appropriate content for their audience using persona. And she's skilled at brand creation, brand building, company and personal branding, omni-channel communication strategies, content marketing, LinkedIn marketing, and LinkedIn marketing. Thanks, Vanshika. I think this is one of the most important sessions, my dear friends, because if you have stuff and you don't know to tell the story, it's more of selling yourself. So I might have a great profile, I might have done 100 things, but if I don't sell myself, I mean, the market doesn't like it, right? In my own words, as I say, only a crying baby gets milk. It's like the Woodward story. I mean, on the lighter side. Thank you very much, Vanshika, for joining us and
Thank
being here and
you.
accepting to do the session. Over to you.
Of course. Thank you so much. All right. Hi, everybody. Super excited. Oops, what did I do? No, I was not supposed to do that. Hi, sorry about that. I am super excited to be here. Thank you for having me. It is awesome to be here again, second time around. And yeah, really excited to share specifically on this topic because this is literally what I do day in and day out. So yeah, I mean, I would love to share all of my experiences, and more than that, I would love for you all to ask me questions. I mean, there is so much within storytelling that can happen. And yeah, I'd love to hear your questions because that will help make the session more interactive and not just me talking at a screen, which is what I don't want to do. I want to answer all the questions that you might have and you are stuck with, or maybe you're questioning. Can you all see my screen? That's the first question.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, ma'am, we can see.
You can? Okay, awesome. Because
And
I
let's do
can't see.
Q&A, and so we have a Q&A tab, so we'll direct everyone for Q&As later after your presentation, right?
Sure. All right. Works. Whatever works. I mean, either way, I would love for you all to take notes and ask them at the end or whenever. So, all right, let's quickly get started. Thank you for the lovely intro. I am going to try and redo the story with my version of it. So thanks for that because you covered everything, which was like not on plan. Now I have to come up with a new story. So this is totally impromptu, but let's hope this goes as well as planned. So hi, everybody. Really nice to have you here. A lot of you know about me, but I will fill in the gaps with a story that tells you more about who I am as a person. Like I mentioned, started at Northeastern. I graduated with a marketing and management degree, but I actually went to Northeastern to study accounting. I thought I wanted to be an auditor, and 1.5 year into doing accounting classes, I was like, this is not for me. I have to shift and I have to go and do marketing. So that's like really the true calling. When you say that, oh my God, somebody actually had a calling, that was what happened to me while I was in college. I worked for about 4 years in corporate. I was in the US and then I was in India. Majority of my work has been in marketing, content, communication, events, PR, lot of different kinds of things. I mean, if there is one advice you can take away from here right now before we even start, it's always be ready to experiment. Right when you graduate, you're fresh, you're totally, like, the field is open to you. Go try everything and anything. You never know what is going to really call you out and make your career happen. So take that advice from me over here. Now for over a year and a half, I've been consulting. I do it independently. I do brand and communications, and storytelling is a big part of what I do every single day. I've worked with over 70 plus startups to help them with their brand strategy, their brand story, their brand personality, and so many other things. That being said, another advice is get on LinkedIn as soon as possible. I'm telling you, I feel so bad that I didn't start LinkedIning earlier. I started after I graduated, which was already late. So if you have not started on your LinkedIn, please do. That being said, this year I was awarded LinkedIn's Top Voice of 2021. I've got over 105,000 followers on LinkedIn. And also, I was on the Pepper content list as a LinkedIn leader. So, other than that, outside work, I really enjoy reading a lot. I enjoy listening to podcasts. I enjoy cooking. And as of recently, I've enjoyed working out. So, that is my version of the story. And I hope you all liked it. So just to kind of get started, right, I think this is a very nice quote that I use in all of my storytelling sessions, that no story lives unless someone wants to listen. And the importance is not on creating the best story, it's finding somebody to hear your story and knowing who is hearing your story, right? If you don't know who is hearing your story and why they want to hear your story doesn't matter. And the next thing which she says is that the stories we love best do live in us forever. If any of us have seen, Harry Potter, have read the books, you know how gripping that story is. It's, I think, what was it, 6 or 7 books and movies, and we still went and read each of them, watched each of them. I still can watch on Amazon. I mean, I could still go back and watch Harry Potter. It's that good a story. So whether you come back by the page or the big screen, Hogwarts will always be there to welcome you home. That is like where the story was. That's where everything happened. That's the base of the story. And J.K. Rowling has built an amazing story just around an idea that I think she very coincidentally had. Harry Potter was never a story that was like thought of for extra long. It actually was a serendipitous insight or something that she came up with. And the story behind Harry Potter is amazing as well. I would encourage all of you to go and read it. Quickly, as to why we need storytelling, right? First thing is dopamine, it's the emotion. Think of any story you've heard from your childhood till today, right? Think of Little Red Riding Hood. You have the feeling of her being secure, then you have the feeling of her being scared, then you have the feeling of her trying to save herself, all of these emotions. Every single emotion releases dopamine, which is the emotion hormone, and that makes us want to read further, turn the page, read further, watch the movie further. Think of any Hindi movie, right? How many of us would willingly watch 3 hour movies if they didn't have a story? I guarantee you zero people would watch it. Next thing is the cortex, which is basically what gets activated when you're processing facts. This means that your story needs to have a lot of factual information throughout the story so that the audience can grasp onto it, and that's what will kick off the cortex activity. Neural coupling is basically when the story like continues on and you feel each part of it and you turn it into an interpretation of your own, right? For example, if you watched Inception, they leave it at the end with like a very open ended, right? Like each of us has our own interpretation of what happened. That is where they've used neural coupling very, very well. And mirroring is basically when you hear something and you correlate it to something similar that you know, right? So, like, I mean, when you think of, say, Harry Potter, and you pick up his characteristics, and then you start thinking about how can you become Harry Potter, or what can you take from Harry Potter to become better. That is all the mirroring part of the brain. So storytelling is so powerful, and it is powerful because it helps you process just basic facts into something meaningful, something memorable, and something that makes you feel something, right? How many times have we all gone to the movies and cried, right? Like that is a very strong emotion, right? You don't just cry until you feel it inside. Like I remember watching Tare Zameen Par and crying my eyes out, right? I mean, that emotion that they brought through the story is so strong that, I mean, nobody around me was not crying. Whereas on the other hand, if you think of happy movies, you think of La La Land, for example. It's one of my favorite musicals. I mean, that movie brings up so much emotion through music with such little words. It's beautiful. So storytelling comes in so many different sizes, shapes, forms, types. um, but as entrepreneurs, I mean, there are some certain kinds of stories that you need to know how to tell. The first is the origin story, right? So I tell everybody very funnily that I've traveled the world the wrong way around, right? That is my origin story in one line. And the reason I say that is because I was born in Dubai, I was brought up over there, I studied in the US, and then I landed up in India. Usually people go from India to Dubai to US. I did it ulta. So that's my like origin story. I tell people about the fact that I started at a British school. And I even tell people the story. A lot of people ask me, like, how is your English so good? How are you so good at public speaking? And a lot of that has to do with my school, because when I was in school, right, the principal of my school, she would come and take our spelling test. Can you imagine a second, third, fourth grader getting their spelling test done and checked by the principal of the school? The fear, the amount of fear it instilled in all of us, I can't even begin to tell you. And because of that, because of how important English was, and how important and how much importance was paid to the English language, is why I'm here where I am today, which is why my English is so great and my public speaking is something I'm always working on, right? That is the origin story. My vision story is that I really want to impact hundreds of brands with an amazing strategy, so that their audiences understand what their brand is and why they should buy into that brand. So that is my vision with my consultancy business, is to impact people that are struggling. So most of my clients are between startups that are about 1 year old to about 3 years old, and they usually come to me saying, "Vanchika, like we need help because our audience is not the audience we're getting is not right." Or they come and tell me like, "Vanchika, our brand has changed and pivoted so many times. We don't know our story yet." So that is where I want to be, and that is the vision that I have. That I want every entrepreneur and every startup to have a very good, solid story that is believable by their audience, so their audience buys into their product. The sales story, however, is more around the fact that, like, if you don't have branding, then this is what will happen. So whenever I'm pitching to a client, right, and I, as a consultant, I'm always in sales mode. There's not a single day where I'm not pitching a client. So my sales story is that branding seems like an intangible item in your checklist of things that you need to do. But at the same time, if your brand is not done well in the beginning, first thing that will come up is inconsistency. Your website will say something else, your social media will say something else, your PR will say something else, and nobody will be able to correlate that story. The second thing is that when your branding is not done right, your recall value goes down marginally. Why do we know that Coca-Cola is red? Why do we remember that Pepsi is blue? Why do we, when we think of, say, take a laptop, why do we think of Apple as the superior brand? Apple, if you put an Apple laptop and another laptop next to each other, product wise, they're almost the same. But why is Mac and Apple's branding so goddamn good that you cannot take your eyes off it? And they've done their branding so well that they're able to command nearly double the price of a normal laptop. And this is pure fact. That is their sales story. For example, if you were to take Apple's instance. Next thing is the inner monologue, right? So every entrepreneur has so many thoughts and so many ways of seeing the world, right? It's never that my story and what I'm thinking in my head will be the same as someone else. So my inner monologue is basically what I share on my LinkedIn. I talk about branding, I talk about communications, I talk about storytelling, I talk about being a freelancer, I talk about the gig economy, I talk about being a creator. Those are all inner monologues that I keep having with myself. Like, what if a brand does not have a purpose? Why should everybody try freelancing at least once for at least 2 years? Why should someone quit their job, right? These are all inner monologues that I keep having. And my place to document it is LinkedIn. So these are the kinds of stories that as an entrepreneur will come super, super handy through your journey, right? A lot of an entrepreneur's journey for the first at least 2 to 3 years of the company's life is telling that story of who you are behind the brand, and then the brand story of what does this product or service do. So these two stories, right, are so important. The vision story and the sales story, those obviously will also keep happening, but the origin story of why did you begin, where have you come from, why should I listen to you, and then the next one is like, why should I buy into your brand, right? Those two are so important, I can't even begin to tell you. And when we think of the origin story and the vision story, that's more on the lines of personal branding. When you see on LinkedIn and you see people talking about themselves, talking about what's next for the business, those are all origin and vision stories. Sales and inner monologue, and I mean, sales is usually to customers and stuff. Inner monologue, not too many people share. But overall, these are the four stories that you absolutely need to have, or know or have set, before you get onto whatever you're getting onto. All right, so the next question that's probably going to come up is like, where do I begin, right? So the first thing you need to do, right, with each of these stories is find your purpose and your goal. Why should someone listen to you, right? Why is your story important? What are you trying to communicate? If you answer that as crisply as possible, you will be doing yourself a huge service, right? If I told you my vision story is this and that and this and that, you will not remember anything. But because I told you one simple statement, my vision is to impact hundreds of early stage entrepreneurs to make sure that they're telling the right story to their audience, so their audience buys into their product. That's it. That is the importance of having the goal and making it extremely crisp, because I know if I went and told people 10 different things of what my vision is, nobody's going to remember anything. Second is audience interest and curiosity, right? Parts of what I told you while I was introducing myself and while I was talking about the stories and talking about storytelling is because I know my audience. I know who you all are, even though I can't see you and I don't know you personally. I know demographically where you are situated, which is why I told you the story of how I went to college to become an accounting major, did it for a year and a half and quit and jumped, right? I would never have said that on another webinar, right? Because nobody cares. Here I am telling you this because I know you care. You want to know the journey, you want to know the story. Why did I tell you about the fact that when you graduate, go try everything? You never know what's in store for you. That is because I know that you guys are soon to graduate, and there's a lot of confusion in a lot of people's heads when they're about to graduate. Like, what do I do? Where do I begin? And honestly, no one has the answer. You have to figure it out yourself. Careers are never a straight line path. It's always like up and then you go down and then you come up. And so that's why I told you that story, right? Because I know your interest lies in that. Third is to be authentic and transparent, right? Everything that I shared with you today is bits and pieces on my LinkedIn, and bits and pieces what you actually find out here today, right? So me being here and sharing all of this is candid. I don't have it written anywhere in front of me. It's totally transparently, authentically me, right? Nothing that I've told you is a lie. Nothing that I've told you is a twisted truth. It's all transparently me, which is the most important part of storytelling, right? Going back to the Harry Potter example, right? The reason why Harry Potter as a character develops and you are interested in that character is because every single situation that he's faced with, he shows a different part of his personality, right? Like, what does he do when, the one who must not be named shows up? What does he do when Dumbledore is about to die? What does he do with his friends? How does he act at the Yule Ball? How does he act when he's playing Quidditch, right? All of these things, these are all personality traits that she has brought out very smartly in different instances to show you and make you feel like Harry Potter is a real person. It's very hard for me to explain to you how to make you feel like a person, but if you read your story and you're not feeling it, nobody's going to feel it. That's the bottom line. And then the next thing is to keep them hooked, right? A lot of this presentation, right? It When I structured it and wrote it and created it, I was thinking in terms of what could be the next question. What is the next thing they want to ask? What is the next thing they want to know? And then based on that, I structured the presentation so that it flows together and you're not bored. If you are bored, please tell me and we can skip to the next slide. But hopefully, I'm hoping that a lot of you don't get bored and you stay excited and stay interested and write these points down and keep asking me questions, and I will answer all of them through the end. And yeah, let's stick on to this journey. One very very important part of storytelling, doesn't matter what story you're telling, doesn't matter who you're telling the story to, doesn't matter when you're telling the story: context. This is the biggest thing that people forget when they're telling their story, and I'll tell you why. If I just told you, like, oh yeah, I traveled the world around, I went from Dubai to US to India, and now I'm here, you won't be able to make anything out of it. The context is that I was born and brought up in Dubai, I studied in the US, and then I came to India, worked in India, quit my job, now I'm freelancing. Context is equal to description, which is equal to people getting more and more hooked into your story. So when you're building a story, right, first thing first is to think of where all can you add a lot of detail, right? Any detail, right? For example, if you're talking about your journey story, right, your origin story, talk about your background, talk about your parents, talk about what kind of degrees your parents had, talk about if you were the first kid to go to college in your family. I came across so many of these kind of people when I was at college. If you want to talk about the fact that you came from a small town and now you're working in this huge MNC in Delhi, talk about it. Talk about the fact that you struggled, you took 6-hour buses and you came for the interview and it rained on the day, right? These are the facts that make people want to listen to your story. And not only just listen to your story, even when you're interviewing, add as much detail as you can when you're interviewing. For example, like, nobody cares, like, oh yeah, you studied at this university and you did this degree. Nobody cares. Tell them why you thought you want to do this degree. Tell them what your end goal is. Tell them why this thing appeals to you. Detail, 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 as much detail as you can fill in. That is the best suggestion I will give you. And then also there is a upper limit to detail. Like, nobody needs to know that you wore a blue shirt and a black tie to your interview when it rained. People want to know that you took a 6-hour bus and it rained, right? Nobody cares what you wore. So think of what details are important to make your story, right? And every single one of us will have a different story, and every single one of us will have a different way of telling that story. So make use of the fact that you are you. You are a person who has a completely different story than anybody. And being an entrepreneur, like, you have the best opportunity to create that story the way you want it to be told to the world, right? That is the bottom line. Next thing is, like, I don't know if how many of you have noticed, right? But as we're going through the slides, right, I personally feel like things are moving faster. Like, we started slow. I told you about myself. Then I started about storytelling, and then the next 2-3 slides have been a little fast. That's intentional. It's not like I didn't plan this out. It's intentional because if I bore you out with 20-minute lectures on each slide, you will totally zone out by the fourth slide. Instead, what I did was, okay, I'm going to do 4 points here, I'm going to do 4 points there, and then I'm going to tell you this, that you need to keep pace with your story, right? It's not like, हाँ ठीक है ये हुआ, then this happened, then that happened. Like, just the essentials and build momentum so people are excited to know what's next. The more people are excited to know what you're going to say next, the more they're going to listen to you. And not just listen, they're going to actively listen to you, because they're going to be like, something good is coming. If I miss it, I'm going to have FOMO, right? So that's one of the things. I'm sure all of you know who this is. If you do, tell me in the chat. I'm pretty sure all of you know who this is. Do you all know who this is? Yes? Mark Zuckerberg, right. Okay, 2, 3 of you got it right. How many of you know where Facebook was started from? How many of you know the story? Why was Facebook created? Yes, it was Harvard. Why did Facebook start? What is the reason of that? How many of you know this story? Yes, it was Harvard. He was a Harvard student. Why did he create Facebook? What was the original thought of Facebook compared to where we are now? That's a different story. But what was the original plan? Yes, he did indeed steal the idea. Yes, it was a social network for, okay, very interesting. A lot of you know this story. Okay, awesome. So I'm going to quickly, oops. Wait, how do I play this? Oops, that's not working. Hold on one second. Let me just play this video that I found, which was quite interesting. Give me a second. Okay, there we go. It's playing. Can you see it?
We can see it, ma'am. Is there a music
Yeah.
behind it?
No, there's no music. It's just a presentation, a Prezi embed link. So, okay.
Yes, we can see this.
Yeah, hold on one second. Oops, wait, I did it wrong. Okay, so here we go. So this is Mark Zuckerberg. He was born in New York. This is where he was. And then what happened is that we moved to here, where he is he goes to Harvard. He with friends in 2004 he launched Facebook. He drops out of Harvard in 2004. Not I don't know how many of you know that. 2005 they got their first funding, and 2007 they opened it to anybody. So by till that time it was just Harvard, and he turns down a $15 billion offer from Microsoft. Can you imagine? And then in 2008 he got into some trouble. 2010 he was on the Times list of the people that people should know. And then in 2012 he got married, and his net worth is $17.5 billion, which is insane. And then 2015 they had a baby, and now here we are in 2020, 2021, and we know the story of Facebook till today. This is the Zuckerberg story. This is not the Facebook story. So the same way that they've illustrated this presentation, that is the way that a story is built, right? Can you all see my screen? Okay, hold on. It says it's sharing. Can you all see it?
Yeah, we can see it. Sorry.
Okay, can you see it now? I changed the screen.
No,
It
it's
says
not
sharing
yet.
is paused. One second.
Just stop it and share it again, ma'am.
Yeah, 1 second. Hold on. All right, you should be able to see this now.
Yes,
Can you see it?
we can see your mouse.
Okay,
Yes.
how many of you know who this is? Put it in the chat. How many of you know this gentleman? Wow, you guys are very smart. Wow. Okay. Yes, you guys are right. This is Zoho Books founder Sridhar Bamboo. Yes, absolutely. So I read this recently on Forbes as he's the smartest unknown Indian entrepreneur today, right? Sridhar, sorry, grew up in a very, very modest middle class family in Chennai. He's from a very middle class average family. None of his parents went to college. Okay. Yet he went and he got his PhD in electrical engineering from Princeton. So he did his undergrad, master's. He's a PhD in electrical engineering from Princeton University. And when he started till today, the company that he's at, Zoho, has not raised funding. It is still a bootstrap company. And today they're dealing in billions. It's a huge company, huge. And he has been featured on so many different websites and so many different places. It's so impressive. So I would suggest everybody, if you don't know about him yet, please go and read about him. He is an amazing individual and so down to earth, so humble. The story of his is just crazy as to how it started, what next, what happened after. Amazing story of him as a human. Forget Zoho for now. Please go read up on him if you have not already. It keeps saying the screen sharing is paused for some reason, even though I didn't do anything. Hold on 1 second. Let me just see what's happening. All right, it's
We can
sharing
see,
now.
ma'am. Yeah.
Okay, right. So I think each one of us over here has a story to share, and every entrepreneur needs to be a good storyteller. Whenever you're facing the public, be it facing the public and speaking, be it writing an article, be it sharing your thoughts on LinkedIn, be it writing a book, right? Every entrepreneur wants to write a book at some point. You need to be a very good storyteller throughout, because at the end of the day, when no one knows your business, they're going to trust you as a human. A lot of the formation of an entrepreneur relies on the story that this entrepreneur tells, which is why so many entrepreneurs register for these mastery courses, leadership courses, coaching. They get mentored by the best of the best, and they pay crazy amounts of money to learn from other leaders how they built their story. It's a super lucrative market for people to just learn about themselves. So now that you guys are here and you have time to think about this till you all become entrepreneurs, start thinking about your story. Because tomorrow, if you go and tell somebody, like, here's this glass, you should buy this glass, nobody's going to buy it. Instead, if I told you that, hey, this glass is something that I saw, like, I don't know, we can come up with any story. Like, my mom used to like this shape, and then I watched her, creating beautiful memories of people at my house. And this glass has been a standard at my house for so many years. And this glass itself has so much significance that I decided to pick this up and create something else out of it, right? You can create a story out of anything, right? What I did just now is complete crap, but you can basically pick up anything and you can tell a story about it. And going back to the first couple of slides with the 5 stories that you need to have, absolutely, those are the foundations of your entrepreneurship journey. Tomorrow, when you say you're going for your first round of funding, right? The first thing these people are going to ask you is, tell us about yourself. Business aside, business will happen. Business is business. Business at the end of the day is just an idea and a story put together. Tell us about who you are. Because when people are putting down money for funding, they want to know who this person is. Because if this person's character, vision, mission, values, ethics don't align with the investors, they're not going to give a shit about your business. So make sure, like, even when you're pitching, remember this, remember me when you go pitch to whenever you get your first investments. Always tell your story with pride and be confident, and then the company story. Because the company story is like, you're pitching and you're getting money for this, but at the end of the day, that's also just an idea and a story put together. People are going to invest in people. People are not necessarily investing in the business. The business and the person are so interconnected, because if they don't trust the person, they don't trust the business. That's it, simple fact. And I've heard this over and over from people. Next thing, again, when you're telling a story, right, make sure that you've got it structured. You need to, your first draft will never be good. Your 10th draft might not be good. So here's one quick tip that I use personally that has really worked for me, is start with the beginning and the middle, then go back and edit the start, and then go back down and edit or write the end. Because what you started with and you develop that idea, you'll realize that you've missed out things about the development in the beginning. And then if you continue on to the end, you're going to completely skip on it. So my suggestion is, if you're writing any of those 5 stories, start at the top, write the middle, edit the top, then do the last part. Because if the first, say, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds don't impress anybody, they're not even going to care about the rest of the story. So do it this way. It makes the most sense. It has worked for me, and it will definitely work for you. Also, another great tip that I use is whenever I'm doing, say, PR articles for clients, right? The first thing I ask them is, tell me your purpose of doing this article. What is your end goal? Are you looking to have people come download something on your website? Are you looking for people to get to know about you? Is it brand awareness? Are you trying to upsell people who already know you? So, for example, Ola recently has been doing great storytelling with the Ola electric vehicles. If you haven't heard of it yet, go check out their social media, go check out the founders' LinkedIn and Twitter. So, what they've done is they've taken the founders' story and told the story of this new electric launch through the founder story. So, go read it. It's a great example that is happening around us today as we speak. And it is a developing story. So, you can learn a lot. You can learn about how they're telling the story. You can learn about the things that they are saying. You can learn about what are the kinds of what are the kinds of storylines they're building, right? So this story of their electric vehicle launch is going to last for at least a couple of weeks, if not months. So go check it out. Follow Ola on your social medias. Follow the owner, because they are basically telling the story through him. It's a great example. So definitely do that. All right, so these are just some of the basic stuff, like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe, but a storyteller's guide to the universe that you all need to know. Um, a lot of us think that the end is really important, and I'm going to tell you again, this is like not as important. The end is the least important. Let me tell you this from all that I know. It's literally the first couple of things you say, right? For example, great another example, right? If my story didn't interest or impact any of you, we would not have what, how many people do we have? 48 people here with us today who are still listening to me for 30 plus minutes. This would not have happened if my story was boring, right? So the end is important, but it's not as interesting and as important as your beginning, which is why I said beginning, middle, beginning, then do your end. Because by if your first two, three storyline and your first two, three things you want to say come together, then only the end matters. Otherwise, it really doesn't matter. So there are four parts in every story, right? First is the context setting. So, for example, like I told you, like I've traveled the world the wrong way around. Rising story is the fact that I wanted to study accounting, but I didn't. I graduated with marketing and management, and then I quit my job in 2019 November. 2020 Jan, I jumped independent. Stabilization is, I think, like the story of over the last 1.5 years about how I have created a career for myself. I've been consulting. I've consulted 70 plus brands. I've consulted brands like Swiggy. I've consulted brands like Heads Up for Tails. I've consulted some of the biggest brands I would never have gotten to work with if I was in corporate. And the landing story is the fact that today I am so much happier, so much more content with the work I'm doing. I'm working on my own terms. I've made mistakes, but I've learned so many things about business, about sales, about marketing, about branding, about communications that I would have never got to learn in corporate. So that is the kind of contextualization of the four stages of every story, right? You can't just be like, oh, today I'm a consultant, this is why you should listen to me. You need to build up the story. You need to tell them why they should care. That is the rising part. The stabilization part is where you put in all your details, right? Like I quit my job just like around Diwali time, and I was actually still interviewing and thinking if I should freelance or not for like November, December. And then Jan is when I decided. So, like all of these little points, right? They matter. They make such a huge difference. It's crazy. Next thing is the ingredient list, right? You need to have these things, right? Person's attention. You need to be in the right frame of mind. As a storyteller, if you are not in the right frame of mind, your story is going to come out completely crooked. You need to have a very imaginative brain, because what you might feel might not be something that somebody else resonates with. So imagination is the most important. In say, you need to have that takeaway of like today at the end of this session, what I want you to take away is how to tell a story and what all do you need to have in telling that really good story. You need to personalize it. Like everything I've told you till right now is completely personalized. If I was doing this for a corporate, I would not tell them that I quit in November and decided to jump independent in Jan. I wouldn't tell them that I was an accounting major and then shifted into marketing. These are all nitty gritties that I've added because because I know who you are. Simplicity, right? Like my story is so simple. I've said it so many times that I remember it by heart. But more than that, it's a very simple story to follow, right? A happens and B happens and C happens and D happens and today I'm here, right? So that, and then the structure, like through the story. I mean, obviously, if I had like 1 hour to tell you my story, it would be completely structured and well structured. But you've heard it in bits and pieces, and that structure is really important to the story because that's what grabs their attention. Next thing that has worked for me, right? Especially when I'm working with clients, when I'm telling people stories, when I'm doing personal branding, when I'm telling company stories, brand stories, listen, because everybody sees the world a different way. Second most important thing of a storyteller is to connect the dots. If you leave your audience wondering and questioning, like, how did this happen, or why did this happen, or how did this impact this, you're not doing a good job. Third is to empathize. Empathize means that you need to feel what your audience is feeling. You need to take time off, right? I think a super underrated hack for storytellers is don't think that you can just crank out a story overnight and it'll be the perfect story. You need to spend time with it. You need to empathize. You need to understand, if I say this, how will the audience react? If I say this, what will they feel? If I do this, what will the impact be? All of that comes with empathy. And then a narration, right? Imagine if I talk to you all in the same tone for the last 40 minutes, none of you would listen to me, right? So narration matters a lot. And that was an example of how I would bore you out. Instead, the way that I'm narrating it, the way I'm talking to you verbally and non-verbally, my voice is modulating. These are so important. I mean, I can't even tell you how many hours I've spent in front of a mirror, like just talking to myself to know that I'm not talking in like one straight boring pitch. That is the biggest mistake you can make when you are telling a story. Next thing, I mean, another quick hack that I can tell you now that we're here is pausing, right? Pausing gives people time to think about what you just said. It's so underrated. But if I pause and I let you think and I let you experience what we're experiencing right now, you will think of the story a different way, right? Okay, I think we're all cool till now. Last couple of slides, and then we're gonna go to Q&A. So there are some frameworks, right? You don't need to try and hack this from scratch. There are frameworks that have been created for you. Literally, just these are just a couple of them. These are, I think, 3, 4 of them. But there are frameworks already created. You can go to this. You can just look it up. They're called story arcs. All the stories in the world have the same like story arc structure, right? Like they pick either this story or that story or that story, and they create the story based on that. So there are multiple, I think there are about 7 or 8, but I'll just tell you the 2, 3 that I think are used very often. Cinderella story is basically like where so I okay, so maybe Sridhar is an example of the Cinderella story, where he comes from a very small town. He struggled, his parents don't have a degree, he got a PhD, he made it through, he found a problem, this happened, then he realized that he needed to change his product, and then he changed it, and then suddenly it took off. Now they've got a suite of products, right? That is the Cinderella story, where you start off very small and you basically build on that story through and through. Are you guys able to see the presentation? Because someone just said that slides are stuck, but it says I'm screen sharing.
Just try to
Oh my,
reshare, ma'am.
give me 1 second. Hold on. Let me just try and reshare it because you should be able to see it. Otherwise, there's no point. All right, can you see it now?
Yeah, framework that works.
Yeah, so these are the
Yeah.
frameworks. Yeah, all right, cool. So this is the story of the Zoho founder, right? It's a Cinderella story of starting very small, very poor, coming from a middle class family, rising up, failing, going back down, and then going back up. So this is an example of the Zoho story. Man in a Whole story is basically where you start very like high up, and then you fall all the way down, and then you go back up. Sadly, the only example I can think of this is the Facebook story with the Cambridge Analytica, right? The whole scam that happened, and everybody was like really pissed off. But for example, this is the Facebook story, right? They started off at a very positive point. They lost so much trust and credibility because of the Cambridge Analytica scam. And then they're like now back up where people either don't care or have accepted it or just want to be connected with their friends, family, and community. So they're like, okay, we have to use Facebook. So that could be the Facebook story, for example. And the last one is the rags to riches story. So this could possibly be like the Harry Potter story, right? So kid that's left, orphan kid, discovers that he's suddenly a magician, discovers his way through, goes to Hogwarts, and now he's like protected, and the whole storyline. Like this is the rags to riches story. So it's very easy to pick up one of these kinds of frameworks and then plug in your story. So just today at the end of this session or tomorrow, look it up. There are about 6 or 7 of these, with all like different arcs. Basically, it's all about the arc. It's like, where do you start your story and where do you end your story? So these are the 2 3 that I've used the most, like the rags to riches. I've used the Cinderella story. I've used the man in the whole story. So for example, recently I was talking to an entrepreneur who failed, I think, 6 businesses, and now it's on the 7th and they're raising funding. So that's like the rags to riches story that we're using. That guys come from a small town, decided to do this, did it with his college friends, failed, did this, failed, built a company up to 20 people, failed again, and so over time, and now he's here where he's like trying to raise funding. So that's the storyline we're using for him for PR, for example. Another example is so I was working with this health and wellness brand, right? And like their story, for example, was all about how human health like deteriorates and nobody cares or nobody realizes till things are really really bad. So we're using that story of the dip, which is like, hey, you're doing well, but at the same time, if your body is not telling you something, doesn't mean it's not something. It doesn't mean that things are not going wrong. So while your health is important, you need to take care of your health. If not, this is what happens. If you take care, this is what happens. So that full up inverted kind of storyline is what we're talking about. And this is the last one, which is the exact opposite of what I just told you, which is start from low, go high, and then fall back down. So I think an example of this, I can't think of any right now, but basically this is the opposite of what I just said. The opposite was starting from low, going up, going down, and then yeah. So this is like, so that, like I said, there are like 5, 6 of these. Go read it up, because at the end of the day, when you find one of these story arcs that attract you, that is what will really get you going, because then you'll be like, okay, now I need to say this, now I need to say that. Gayatri, I think it's working because I can see the diagram showing on screen. So maybe it's your internet. Um, just last 2 slides before I sign off and go to questions. The world is a really chaotic place. There's so much of information, so many stories being told to us every day, that if your story doesn't have a meaning or an impact on somebody's life, they're just going to forget it and they're not even going to pay attention. So remember that all today in 2021, we're in a very confusing state where there are so many brands trying to tell us so many stories, people telling us stories, that it's very hard to pick and choose which one we should pay attention to. But the ones that you will naturally pay attention to are the ones that pull an emotion out of you, are the ones that you relate to, are the ones that you're like, oh, I didn't think of this, or oh my God, look at this person's story. They came from nowhere and now have become something so important. At the end of the day, you need to add emotions, context, personality, structure, flow, like everything we talked about right now, right? Those are the most important parts of a story. Doesn't matter what story you're telling, right? It could be a 1 hour movie, it could be a 3 hour movie. If the storyline is not good, you will not watch it. That's the bottom line of storytelling. Last thing to end with, 5 things that I want you all to always remember. Keep the story simple. A lot of times, even in content writers, right, they try and they go and they find synonyms or words that don't even make sense and are so complicated. I'm like, why are you even saying this, right? Like, it's so complicated that somebody would have to spend time to understand what you're saying before they understand what you're actually saying. Neeraj, it's visible. I think
Yeah,
I
it's
can see
visible.
it on screen. Yeah, I think it's your internet. Start with the end in mind. I said this again. I'm saying this again because um, while you know the end, right, the beginning and the middle is so important, because that is, if you don't fix your beginning and your middle, your end is not going to matter. So start with knowing where you want to end, but don't write the end till you fix your beginning and your end middle, because that will impact your end directly. Next thing is, think of how others would say your stories, right? Everybody's story, doesn't matter what, um, comes from memory recall, and there is only so much that we can remember in our lives, right? So if your story is complicated, if it's too twisted, if it's too many things that you're telling your audience, they're not going to remember you at all. So think of what is the easiest way for someone to communicate your story, right? I think that's the bottom line. Like, your story needs to be repeatable for it to be a good story. And next thing is create a chronology, right? Like, I started out with my entire story starting from where I was in Dubai, then the US, then India, right? But that's not always how you have to do it. I could have started with, like, now I'm loving my life, and this is what I'm doing right now, and this is how I got to where I am. So that's completely shifting the chronology over, which is completely okay. As long as there's structure, there's flow, there's rhythm, there is detail, you can literally swap your entire story around and you'll get the idea and the essence of what the person is trying to say. Next thing, again, super underrated, sleep on it. I can't tell you how amazing it is to write and edit, leave it for a night, come back the next day, and then be like, oh, I didn't think of this, and go back and edit it. It's so underrated, but if you do it, you will see the magic, because a lot of times when you're sleeping, your brain is still processing things. It's not like it's asleep. So when you're asleep, you're actually like trying to see, like, oh, what if I did this? What if this happened? What if this changed? And in all of that, and the beauty of all of that is that you will wake up the next day saying, oh wow, like, I could have said this differently, or let me go change this completely and say this. Super underrated. Try it. Tell me it does not work, and I will not believe you, but guaranteed it works. That being said, thank you all for spending your last hour with me. That's my website. That's my Instagram. If you want to learn about branding in comms, I share a lot of information on my Instagram, and on my LinkedIn. I talk about freelancing, about being an entrepreneur. I talk about branding, communication, storytelling, all of that on my LinkedIn. That being said, if any of you want to attend freelance masterclass that is happening on this Saturday, which will be all about how do you become a successful freelancer, please DM me on LinkedIn and tell me you want to attend, and I'll send you a special discount code. And I would love for you all to come. Yeah. And thanks, Manoj, for pasting it. Please DM, please write a personalized note so that I know where you're coming from. Otherwise, I can't give you the discount code. So yeah, that's it from me. Thank you all once again for spending your time today, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'm gonna go and start answering all the questions. If you have any questions, do and put it in, because now is your chance to get them answered. All right.
Thank you for the great session, ma'am. I'm trying to look. All the participants, please post any of the questions you have in the Q&A section. I think there are a few questions.
Yes.
The first question is, hello, ma'am. I am into organic food business, and I'm 6 months old startup. Can you help me look into my business and advise so for any sales too less or too is if.
Yeah. So yeah, I can for sure. And before you reach out to me, you need to have some story written or thought of, because I can't create something that doesn't come organically from you, right? I think that's another thing, which is, you are important to the story. I can write you a story in 30 minutes and say, take this and run your brand, but that's not going to be an authentic story. So reach out to me on LinkedIn, tell me where you found me from, tell me that you want to do this. I will be more than happy to get on a call with you, but you need to have some story ready, because if
Yeah.
you don't have it, I can't help you.
So,
Right.
just to intervene, this is Karthik. So actually, we have a homework. So your homework, definite. So every session we give them homework. So since your session was on amazing storytelling, all their homework. So even as part to get the certificate, we will send out an email to them to submit their story. and
Do
then maybe
it.
we'll
Yeah, I
look at
think that's great.
we'll zip through it and we'll get you maybe 2 or 3 best, and then we will see how we could take that forward.
For sure. For sure. Would
Great.
love to.
No,
And
no, I mean,
that's wonderful. You
no,
should
definitely
definitely,
loved your
yeah, I think
story. I
it's a
mean,
good.
because whatever you said made a lot of sense, and definitely every story is unique. So
Yep.
as you said, I mean, I was born and raised in Germany. Then I come back to Bangalore, and if you ask me, in 6 years or 10 years, I would go settle in a village and open a school. So that's my
Yeah,
story.
there you
Anyways,
go. There you go. Wonderful.
pleasure.
Lovely. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank
Oh,
you.
back to you, Manoj.
Yeah. There is a question on any book recommendation for entrepreneurs.
I can see the question. So can I just go down through them?
Yes, yes,
Is that
please.
okay?
Yes.
Okay. So Neeraj, Neeraj, thank you so much. So sweet of you. Thank you for coming. How would one make his or her story more compassionate? Is it by adding more personal context or purpose? So the only way to add more compassion and emotion to your story is to talk about detail, right? Where are you coming from? Why does this thing matter? Why is this your vision? Why did you change your path? What is it that made you want to do this? Is there a person that inspires you, right? Even another way to tell a story is like, oh, I'm so inspired by this person because, and then back it up and say that because this person did this, I feel I can do this and cause this change in the world. So think think big but talk small is the only way to build more compassion, because people like to be shown a big vision and a big picture, right? We've all heard that famous phrase, right? Big picture, right? So think big but talk small, because if you tell them the big picture instantly, they're going to get lost. So think big and think about what is the larger impact of your thing, right? It's not just that I created a SaaS tool. It's I created a SaaS tool that impacted entrepreneurs. Why do these entrepreneurs care? It's because they're struggling with this and it takes 40 hours per week for them to do this one task. But if they use this, this is what happens, right? So build your story with detail, as much detail as possible, and make it as relatable as possible. The story you'll tell me and the story you'll tell your, say, you're going for funding, will be completely different. You won't tell me the sob story, but you'll go and you'll tell your people that you're pitching to for funding the sob story. You'll be like, oh, I didn't even have money. I started under the lights. This is what I did. I fractured my arm right before my exam, but I still made it through. And all of these struggles, they might seem insignificant, but when you think larger picture, it all comes down to the detail, and making the other person feel that detail, that is just priceless. So definitely do that. Next thing is, can you give an example of point two? Shikha, I don't understand what is point two. You said give an example of point two. Gayatri, book recommendations you would give to entrepreneurs. I'm not too much of a book person, to be honest. I'm more of a podcaster and YouTuber kind of person. So I would say Gary V, amazing at storytelling. Neil Patel, amazing at storytelling. Look at Dave Gadvi. He's on LinkedIn. He runs a Passionpreneur Club. Amazing storyteller. Look at the founder. Look at the Zoho story, for example. Amazing story. Look at the Flipkart story. Like, if you all go and read the Flipkart story, I think there's also a book on it. I heard it on YouTube. But the entire Flipkart story is so powerful. Read the Amazon story, right? Like, these are real life examples. I mean, like I said, I'm not too much of a book reader. I would rather listen to a podcast or watch a YouTube video, but these are some of the things where you can actually learn storytelling from, right? And that's great. I mean, you can learn from examples that are around you. Any tips on developing a story when we need more market awareness for your idea and your solution? Think big, talk small. That's it. If you go and tell someone we want to impact 100 million entrepreneurs, they're going to be like, how? Right? So think big. You want to impact 100 million entrepreneurs, but how are you going to do it? Tell us the how. Tell us why it matters. Tell us what is the difference between you and the 50 other people that are doing the same thing, right? You will build market awareness if you're able to instill trust. If you're not able to instill trust in whoever is listening to you, it doesn't matter, right? It all comes down to trust. Does this person listening to your story care about what you are saying? If the answer is no, you're not doing it the right way. Uh, how did you figure out that marketing works for you? What are the challenges that you faced when you started as as a freelancer? This could be an entire like 1 hour session. So reach out to me on LinkedIn and I will be more than happy to answer it. But thing was, I was doing accounting, but at the same time I was like, when I pictured myself sitting at a desk wearing formal outfits, looking at numbers and data every day, that just didn't feel like me. Like something just felt off. Like I was really good at accounting. I got an A in my GCE O levels, which is like grade 12, your boards. I got a straight A in my accounting, which is why I thought I was really good at it. I like it. I understand accounting. I enjoy the theory. I enjoy doing it. But did I see myself in that situation every single day for the rest of my life? Answer is probably no. All right. Love your work. I've been following you. My question might be unrelated to storytelling. I'm a freelancer and I want to expand. What are the courses you would recommend, consultations or workshops? This Saturday, I have a workshop. If you come to me from this session, I'll give you a special discount code. Tickets are now at 999, but if you reach out to me, I'll give you a discount code and give you the tickets at a discounted price. So reach out to me. It'll really help you. It's a 2 hour workshop and it'll give you all the inside outs of freelancing. Who is your inspiration? Very interesting. I think first is definitely my mom. Like, the life that she's had and the way that she's building her life. I mean, definitely super inspiring. And I think the next person that I really truly admire and can really feel a bond with, even though I've never met him and might never meet him, is Mr. Ratan Tata. I think he's just such an amazing person. Whenever I hear him, like I get goosebumps. Like just listening to him speak gives me goosebumps. Those two people. Um, all right. Podcast recommendations. Guys, you reach out to me. I will just send you a bunch of screenshots. But yeah, I listen to a lot of podcasts. All right. So those were all in the Q&A. Let me see the chat. Suraj is saying, tell me about yourself. You can explain more, like what points should we add to make it more better? So when someone says, tell me about yourself, they're not looking to hear you're like, oh, I graduated from here and I did this. They're looking to hear your accomplishments, right? In an interview, when someone says, tell me about yourself, first thing that you should think of is how do I brag about every single one of my accomplishments, and not just like, oh, I did this. A lot of people brush over their accomplishments because it's easy to do so. It's so easy to say, oh, I played national level hockey. Dude, you played national level hockey. You should talk about it like it's your life, right? So tell me about yourself is a great place to start talking about your details, right? Like, tell me about yourself could be like, okay, I started here, I took up engineering because I wanted to do this. After I graduate, I have this huge plan. I do this because I want to do this. Through my college, I learned, how to do this fun thing. Tell me about yourself is not just your college and your life and your career and your college. It's also who you are as a person, right? So when I used to get asked, tell me about myself, I would tell people like, I love listening to podcasts. I watch a lot of YouTube videos. I enjoy writing content. So tell me about yourself is who you are as a person, and why are you the best fit for this role, or what makes you stand out from the 100 others that are standing outside, right? It could be something so unrelated that will really pique your interviewer's interest, right? It could be something as simple as like, I have 10,000 followers on Instagram. Like, dude, how? Right? Like, I'm a creator. I talk about my love for baking, and when I'm not at work, I bake, and I've got 10,000 Instagram followers and growing at an average rate of 500 a day. Like, that is super impressive over like, I went to this college and I studied this and I did this and I did that, because everybody has that story. Think of what you can stand out with. That is what is going to get you the job. When it's it start with the end in mind. So when I say start with the end in mind, it doesn't mean write the end first. Start with the end in mind is, okay, this is the journey that I want to take. Whoever is listening to me, this is the journey I want to take them on. So you need to have some bullet points, right? Okay, we'll start here, we'll talk about this, and then we'll end here. So you need to know this so that your first two paragraphs correlate to this, right? Because your end is not where you're going to bring up a new point. Your end is going to be like the finale, like the bit of bang bang boom, right? The big finale. So whatever context, whatever information, whatever details you want to add, you have to add it in the beginning and the end, in the middle. And what detail you put where, that is up to you. But begin with this in mind. Like, I want to end on this, like, say for example, you're in an interview and they say, tell me about yourself. You end on the line saying, oh yeah, also out of work, I have like 10,000 followers on Instagram. And that leaves them super curious. And then they'll ask you like, why or how or what do you do, right? Which brings up a conversation. So think about how you want to end it, but start, do the middle, go back to the start, then do the end. That has always, always, always worked. How do you market yourself as a beginner? I feel shy while marketing myself to clients. Just believe in yourself, believe in your skill. When you're in a job, you are being paid for time. When you're not in a job, you're being paid for skill. So when you're out freelancing and building your freelance career, think of how you can market your skill to whoever is listening to you, that you are the best at this skill. That's all they care about. They don't care about your time, right? For me, when I write an about a story for a website, I can crank it out in like maybe an hour. But what happens behind the scenes and how I get it done, the questions that I ask my client, how do I structure it, what do I need, the information I need, all of that stuff happens. And the actual thing that I need to do is maybe like an hour or two of work. But this skill that they're paying me for, which is storytelling and branding and communications, is what's making me earn money irrespective of what the end goal is. So just think about your skill, think about how you can market your skill, think of how you can prove that you're the best at this. Like, for example, I mean, that 70 number is also probably an old number, right? I've probably worked with at least 100 plus companies at this point. Small projects, big projects, one-time projects, retainer projects. And based on what client I'm talking to, the pitch changes, right? Recently, I was talking to this client, who wanted a website done for an edtech product. So I told him, I was like, these are the 3, 4 that I've done in edtech. This is what I did for them. This is how I did it for them. And I would love to take you on as a client. And this is what I can do for you. That's it. They only care about skill. They don't care about your time. Like, you can write website copy in maybe 2 hours, but you're not being paid for 2 hours. You're being paid for your skill. And that's the biggest difference in getting a job and working as a consultant. All right, I think I've answered all the questions that were listed out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
awesome.
ma'am. Thank you for the great session. Thank you for all the attendees for attending this session. We are looking for we have a great session tomorrow also. Thank you again. Thanks for sharing your time, ma'am. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Take care. And whoever wants to reach out on LinkedIn. I'll give you a code for the class this weekend, and you can come and learn what it's like to be a freelancer.
Yeah, please reach out to her on LinkedIn. And tomorrow we have a session on creating pitch deck. Please join us tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, participants. Bye.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.